Welcome to the Legion Outriders podcast, a member of the Radio Free Tattooing Network.
You must unlearn what you have learned.
Your source for the latest Legion news, opinion, and analysis.
You will never find the more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
John Archiquette.
Will somebody get this big walking carpet out of my way?
Matt Turner.
I'm not afraid.
And Joshua Gray.
You will be.
What's going on, Outriders? John, Josh, Matt coming at you from the Hive of Scum and Villainy. It's another beautiful day here in Las Vegas, and we're going to talk about some Star Wars Legion, huh?
So what's the buzz from the Hive?
I hate you
Yeah.
and everything that you've ever done.
Thank you. I'm just shocked that it's taken me this long to. You've done like the same intro every week, week in, week out.
And you finally decided to make the B joke.
A Hive joke, yes.
People value consistency, Matt.
I guess so. Yeah, I mean, I do, sure.
That's why people go to McDonald's. It's the same thing
I'm going to
everywhere.
say it's a Geonosian joke, actually. I'm going to retcon that just a little bit because they lived in a hive.
Do Geonosians make honey?
I don't want.
I don't know what videos you've been
Ewoks
watching.
make coffee.
Yeah.
I don't want to know how Geonosians make honey. No, but we're not even going to go there. Not doing it.
Is it a
Next,
slow news?
next
week from
topic. Star Wars
FFG?
news.
Yeah.
Another licensed franchise business idea. Check.
100% natural Geonosian honey. That's great.
I'm leaving. Goodbye.
Get some of that royal jelly in you.
Oh, God. Oh. All right,
Are we off the rails already?
Yeah.
Somehow, if
My
you've
bad.
managed to make it this far into the podcast, kudos
Thanks,
to you.
guys. Thanks.
Thanks for
You-
sticking
you-
around. We
Couldn't hit that
appreciate your
stop
support.
button fast enough, could you?
Yeah.
Oh, God. So how you guys doing besides, the obvious disgusting
Doing great,
Geonosian
man.
jokes?
I've been busy. This is what this show's all about. I've been busy with this 3D printing stuff.
Well, yeah, and we've actually got somebody coming on that's going to be knowing what he talks about also.
Exactly. Unlike us that are just fumbling around in the 3D printing dark.
Imperial Terrain Dave is going to
Yeah.
be talking about Imperial Terrain and his
So
business
special
doing
guest
that.
coming up. So great. This is awesome.
That's awesome because we don't need little ships that look like they were printed by the world's saddest Christmas elf.
Which this one certainly does that I'm holding in my hand right now, which again is a visual, which makes for great radio. But yeah, so 3D printing is actually pretty cool. Got into it about 2 weeks ago. We've had the printer for like 7 months, but we finally set the thing up like 3 weeks ago. That thing's been humming 24/7, cranking out terrain and trying to get some Star Warsy stuff for the store here. Because there's not a lot of Star Wars stuff out there that's ready-made terrain. So, we've been playing here with getting by with, 40K terrain and general wargaming terrain. So, I figured we'd get it cranking and get some Star Wars stuff out
Wait,
here.
you think there's too many skulls on the terrain that we put in for Star
Very
Wars?
gothic. Yeah, I've yet to see a high gothic planet in Star Wars.
Skulls for the skull guy.
Skull guy.
Yeah, that's what they do. But so before we get stuck onto that, have you guys watched Resistance yet?
No.
No. Would you like to enlighten us about how you've
Yes.
enjoyed it so far, Matt?
John, you would not like it.
Okay.
Okay. Perhaps if you had a few shots, you would probably enjoy it. I'm enjoying it. I've only seen the first 2 episodes, but the first pilot is like a double length, so it's like 3 episodes in. It's pretty good. I like it. It's not quite as, Disney Kids, type thing where
Okay.
it's like it's a lot of bright colors and on the palette and all that, but overall pretty cool. My only complaint so far is his amount of "oh wow" reactions during the first episode. So the guy's supposed to be, the setup is he's a New Republic pilot,
Okay.
but at that point, because this all takes place 6 months before the
Force Awakens?
The Force Awakens.
Okay.
Thank you. But by this time, clunky World War II era CR-90 flies in and he loses his crap. And I was like, come on, man, really? You got to have some better ships flying around in the Navy. But whatever, I understand he's supposed to be the everyman we identify with. And I'm sure if
By his losing
Yeah.
his crap, does he go, oh, wow?
just like
Golly
that.
gee, it's a CR-90.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but and then him having lengthy conversations out in public with the BB-8 but saying, so how do I be a spy? The only thing I could think of is the first rule of Spy Club You don't talk about Spy Club.
Do you remember the opening days
yeah.
of Star Wars Galaxies? Did you play Star Wars Galaxies at launch?
I'm trying to think. I think it was pretty close, within a month or so.
The best thing that they did, and they eventually fixed it, but you could join the Rebellion or the Empire, and you joined the Rebellion by going to the Rebellion recruiter who was standing out front of the Mos Eisley Cantina with a giant rebel flag behind him saying, "Come join the Rebellion," as like stormtroopers walked by. So it's not outside the realm of possibility.
No, clearly they've got to hang a lantern on some of these things to inform the viewer this. Oh yes, his mission is to spy. How do we tell them that he's trying to learn how to spy without him monologuing about it?
And not only do that, but do it to an audience of 8-year-olds who understand nuance in no way whatsoever.
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
Death Star plans.
Oh, wow. They just left him out here. How cool. Yeah.
But overall, it's very watchable. If you enjoyed Rebels, I'm sure you'll enjoy Resistance. And
So there's strike 2 for John.
Yeah.
I will let you enjoy things.
I know there is good in you.
I will let you enjoy things.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I won't criticize
How's
it,
the
but I probably
Brewers
won't
doing?
watch it.
Why
can't you let me enjoy things?
I just asked a
What, do you
question.
enjoy your team losing in the NLCS?
Ooh, okay, never mind.
If you hit 145 in the LCS,
Query
you
with
should
John.
not be MVP. I don't
Right.
care what the regular season
Star
numbers
Wars
were.
News.
Okay.
Got a message from a friend of the, or BFF of the show now.
Oh, okay.
LJ Pena. LVO is up to 39 registrations.
Ew.
That's as of this
And
afternoon.
we're still months away. That's fantastic.
So, we're gonna have a big turnout. We're doing
sorry,
well. So.
Infinity and Flames of War and other small game. We're going to be edging you out, I think.
Yeah.
Wait, so there's 39. So I'm at least guaranteed to not be 40th place yet?
Exactly.
All right.
Correct. Which is, when
You're just shooting for that top 40 position, huh?
Look, all I want in this
America's
LJ,
top
this
40
is
Legion.
my message to you. All I want at the end of the day is just to check like Happy Gilmore style with like the very last place check. Just a giant one so I can carry it around in my Wookiee suit.
Where do I get my giant check?
Well, what about that? I'll take one of them.
Yeah.
See, that's the thing I love about huge tournaments, because I would do this all the time in X-Wing. I'd be like, I finished 53rd. I was in the top half of the field.
Yeah. That top 50%.
I'm a top half X-Wing player.
Yeah.
I finished 53rd.
I have no illusions that I will be a top half finisher.
I always went for, no matter how many people, I always went for top third. That was what I, even if I didn't make the cut, if I finished top third, I had a good day.
I've talked about my Warhammer Fantasy experiences before, and honestly, there's something quite liberating being on the bottom tables, because then you can absolutely, you're just playing for fun. You are just cracking jokes because all the pressure is off. So there is definitely something to be said for just having a blast down there, scumming it at the bottom.
It's like that line in Deadpool. It's like, well, Mr. Wilson, I see you finally reached F it.
Yeah, exactly.
That'll be me.
Yeah.
In my Wookiee suit, probably drunk.
Aw, Sugar Bear.
You reached F it before you signed up.
Yeah.
That's probably
So
true.
let's be honest. Yeah.
Oh man. One more thing in Star Wars news. Mandalorian, or the Mandalorian show that Jon Favreau is producing. We talked a little
Are
bit
we
about.
going to be covering every small thing that comes out of that?
Yes, because it's Mandalorians and they're awesome.
Because it looks cool.
I'm okay with all of this. Okay, proceed.
They released another photograph on Instagram, and they have the shock rifle
From the holidays.
You
special.
watch
Holiday
yourself,
special.
Josh. They've got your number.
Which really makes me kind of conflicted because, on one hand, it's the Mandalorian.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it's
hilarious.
references to the god-awful,
It's all canon, man.
terrible,
It's
I know,
tongue-in-cheek.
holiday special.
Which
but
is
they're
the first
legitimizing it.
Well,
No.
okay, guess who else got their start on the holiday
Yes,
special?
I know.
Lumpy.
I hate you guys. I hate you guys. I just
How dare you hate Lumpy?
Yeah. You thought I was going to say Boba Fett.
did. And I hate you guys. Why do I do this show?
'Cause you love us and we
33
love you.
episodes,
Yeah.
34 episodes. I think
34
I've done
now?
my
Yeah.
time.
The man who beats us to death on a regular basis with Barricada is complaining about
Barricada.
Lumpy.
Yeah, Jesus. See, that you're just going to have to deal with it and soldier on. Soldier on, Josh. It'll be fine.
Yeah. Okay, fine. So what are we talking about this week?
So 3D printing. So
This is like the 3D printing terrain show.
It is.
This is, and it's a big part because Fantasy Flight doesn't have really their own terrain. There's a couple of companies that have come out with their own, knockoff products like Gale Force 9. But having some people that are actually startup companies like Dave and Imperial Terrain is pretty cool because we're getting
Gaming,
all those guys that we're getting a little peek behind the curtain because it sounds simple, right? I buy a 3D printer, I load in the medium and
I get awesome looking stuff
hit
right
play.
there.
And then
it's
not
that easy.
And then I've got X-wings and Y-wings and collector's edition Han Solos with the carbonite, thing going on. Is that not how it works?
No, that's absolutely not how it works.
Okay.
Wait, he wasn't doing jazz hands when he got frozen in carbonite?
I don't remember. I wasn't.
I don't know. I don't think so.
No.
But weren't his hands tied when he went down?
Yeah, cuffed and some.
He was
sort.
cuffed, wasn't
Yeah.
he? And then
Did they free him right before
I don't know.
I don't know. It's been a minute.
I don't remember. It's always been one of the continuity.
3D printing.
3D printing. Anyways, yeah. So I mean, I just kind of got into 3D printing. Set up a printer, and the printer that I have. Printing is a very scary world because there's about 9 million 3D printers on Amazon.
Yeah.
Some of them are really good. Some of them are knockoffs of the really good ones, and some of them are just straight trash.
So if 3D printers were astromech droids, would you say you have the... is BB-8 even considered an astromech? Well, say R2-D2 is
he's
the
an
pinnacle
astromech.
of astromechs.
No, the
and then
3D
you have the
printer I
R4
have-
with a bad motivator.
Yes, the R4
Okay.
with the bad motivator.
Perhaps the Clone Wars, what the R5 with his brain scooped out so the guy could ride along inside of him.
I'll tell you what, the 3D printer I have is functional and sturdy and does the job, but it's not flashy in any way, shape, or form. It's a gonk droid. That's the 3D printer that I have. It just kind of sits in the corner.
Not
it's
speedy.
yeah.
It does the job.
It does the job. It has its purpose. It performs its purpose satisfactorily.
Was that on your resume for your
I was
last
going to say,
job?
that sounds like an EPR I got.
It was, yeah. That's which is how I describe me in
No flash, sturdy, will do what you ask of him.
It's the
end.
Josh Gray of 3D printers.
I mean, I wasn't going to say that, but I do see a sponsorship opportunity here. If they ever want to contact me and have me endorse them, I'd gladly do that.
You could shave a gonk droid into the side of your head. That'd be cool.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
But no, I'm working with it's a Kitty Tech X1 Mark II.
Well, that sounds fancy.
I know, right?
That sounds like
it's a very beginner-ish printer. It's very easy to use. Print quality's okay. But a lot of 3D printing I'm finding out is having the right settings. So you've got to go online and find out.
That's my question.
what's
How
a
much
good
book learning did you need to do
Not
to get
much.
this?
The book
I mean,
learning.
it's
Yeah.
reviewing a couple of one-page web pages, reading a couple articles.
But start to finish, like, okay, they sent you the printer, you get it, you open up the package. Now what?
The printer itself is self-contained. It's and that's the thing. You can buy kits.
You don't need like an engineering degree to get set up with this.
You don't need to.
It would help though.
You can buy kits that are kind of like the equivalent of putting together IKEA furniture.
Okay.
Right? They're meant to be put together.
Yeah, I've heard
and
like the
they're fairly
Tinker
simple,
Toys
right?
kind of, yeah.
Or there are ones that you can buy from Fry's
Constructor.
or whatever that they're self-contained units. Take it out of the box, put it on your table, level it, and go. This one you got to make sure, and you do a calibration print, just like when you get a normal printer, right? A paper printer. You do you set it up, you do calibration print, make sure it's all good.
That's just crap they put on the page to sell ink. They just put every color they can on those things. It's a scam.
Right.
Wake up, sheeple.
So you run out of magenta and somehow still have to buy a new ink cartridge.
Right,
You will
right,
never
yeah,
use
yeah.
magenta ever.
Right.
But I can't print black and white because it's out of magenta.
So yeah, I mean, total setup for this was 15 minutes maybe. And that includes out of the box, calibration, ready to print.
Your mileage may vary.
Your mileage may vary, of course, depending on what model you get. And I can only speak for the one model that I have. And like I said, there's 9 million of them out there. But getting stuff to print was fairly easy. You've got a couple of different avenues out there. You can go online. There's a website called Thingiverse that literally has prints for
Is that
whatever.
from a sci-fi series or something? That sounds
I don't
familiar.
know. I don't know. But you can literally print whatever the hell you want. Like if you have something, pick a fandom, pick something that has utility at your house. Anything, you can find it on there.
So I can print myself a wand holster for my Harry Potter cosplay?
Yes, you can.
Sweet.
You can print display stands
Don't
for
you
your
judge me,
3D
John.
printed.
No judgment.
Yeah, no, but I mean, you joke about it, even to the point where you can go and print Mandalorian armor.
Okay, now you have my attention.
Now, do I have your attention now? I just went Glenn Ross.
Yeah.
Set of steak knives. Anyway,
I would love a set of steak knives.
But what there is some crafting involved in that because you have to go and like the helmet prints in 18 pieces, and then you got to glue it together and sand it and all of that. But yeah, you can make functional Mandalorian armor 3D printed. Cool. From a
the armor is not actually functional. Please do not test this in the field.
Yeah, it won't deflect blaster bolts, So when you 3D print the Han Solo DL-44 and shoot it at your Mandalorian armor, it will not work.
Of course, we don't have Tabana gas, so
Yeah.
how would it work?
Will it digest in the stomach of a Sarlacc monster?
It may,
Okay.
because PLA is biodegradable. Yeah. So, as it pertains to Legion, though, you go on there, you download the files that you want. And then you put it into what's called a slicer program. Usually it comes with a slicer program that it comes with the 3D printer that you buy. Windows 10 also has one integrated into it.
Is it a master
which
slicer?
Is interesting. No, it's not.
Oh.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You're not looking for a red rose or whatever.
The red palm.
whatever. Yeah.
Don't join.
Sorry. Yeah. Anyway. So you got to make sure that what you're printing fits your print bed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like because I have a beginning printer, the print bed's only 150 millimeters by 150 millimeters. It's relatively small. The Legion scale stuff that's out there, if you were to go and print a full up X-wing, wings closed, landed, Legion scale is like 300 millimeters long, right? It's fairly sizable.
Okay.
So you, at that point, you either have two options.
Which is probably why you see so many erect fighters and things like that on the table.
Definitely,
because it's a smaller area.
Yeah, it's
you don't
a
have to do
smaller
a
thing to
complete
print.
thing. Okay.
But at that point, you have two options. You could scale it down, which obviously, if you scale it down, then you're
Now
losing
it's
the
not to
scale.
scale. Yeah.
What is this? A cantina for ants?
Maybe 3 times the size.
Right? Or you can slice it up. You can print it in a couple of pieces. And I gave John a piece of terrain that was sliced up into pieces. So, John,
It was 2 pieces.
take it away.
And
Well,
honestly,
it's 3.
Oh yeah,
Because
you're
it
right.
was-
You lost a
the
piece?
vertical piece. Yeah. No, it looks great. Honestly, like the slices are masterfully done. They, you can easily glue them together, and it's there's maybe put a little bit of green stuff in there just for filler or gap filler. But other than that, yeah, they look good.
So some basic hobbying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
applique.
if you're doing Legion stuff already, the hobbying stuff for 3D printing is not beyond you by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, it's really easy to do. There weren't the layer lines weren't too bad on it. Honestly, I did the primer coat on it, so I'm going to go through and sand it and then do the rest of the painting, and I'll throw the photos up on our Facebook page.
Nice.
But yeah, so far I
Start to
handily
finish.
approve of your first work.
Grabbing the file, hitting print, and calibrating and all that. How long before you had like the building that John has?
Including printing the building.
Yeah.
So the building had to print in 3 pieces.
Okay.
It used up pretty much the entire print bed. And it printed, the 3 pieces printed in a total of about 50 hours.
Wowee.
It takes a while. But
Ain't
it's
nobody
something-
got time for that.
Right?
Well, but I mean, you play EVE Online?
Nobody really plays.
Okay.
online.
You spreadsheet.
Open the
spreadsheet
spreadsheet, yeah.
But it's the same kind of thing, right? It's like, okay, it's printing. It's not like
You don't have to sit there and watch it.
you don't have to sit there and watch
yeah.
it. It's not like you're wasting time. It doesn't record. It's not like painting. I can't just like set my models in the corner and come back in 10 hours and they're painted, right? So all you're doing is hitting print and going away.
Can we have a new saying instead of waiting for paint to dry? We could like waiting for the 3D to print, or
Right? I mean, you cook in a slow cooker, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you put the stuff in, you shut the lid, 2 hours later you come back, you got tasty food.
delicious pot roast.
Exactly.
Wait. So
3D
Matt,
printing's the same thing.
you don't just put models on the table and then like a week goes by and all of a sudden they're back in paint.
Matt does, because
I
when he
do.
puts the models on the table, you pick them up and take them home and paint them.
Yeah,
that's how Matt paints.
I'm the model painting version of Underwear Gnome.
There you go. There it is. What is phase 2?
I don't know. Question mark. Stage 3. Profit.
Have you gotten to profit yet?
He has not gotten to profit. No. But yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that I've found is making sure you get the settings right, because sometimes things have overhangs, right? And if you don't print supports for them, the overhang will droop.
Is that something you have to fix in the file, or is that like a printer setting?
It's a toggle thing.
Oh, okay.
So what it does is it looks for everything that overhangs like the main body, right? Anything that juts out, anything that is independent, and then what it does is it'll print supports for everything as it's printing up.
I need you to make a red rocket,
yeah,
for my Fallout game too.
Absolutely. It's on the thing.
Be awesome.
Cool.
Like
yeah.
there are. You tell me the scale and how tall you want it to be.
Same as Legion, so.
Okay,
yeah.
Perfect. And you can kind of, I've got one of the things that I've 3D printed, kind of a courier speeder, and we'll post pictures up on this online so you guys can see it. But if you look at the roof, see how it's kind of like misprinted a little bit, how it kind of slopes up, because it didn't print supports underneath here.
I gotcha. Okay.
Because I didn't have supports on for this because it's very blocky and angular. So there's not anything that really needs supports off of this print except for this one little thin area. So because as it was printing and you're working with hot filament here, it kind of warped a little bit.
I mean, it's Tatooine. It's hot as hell.
Yeah. I mean, it gives it character.
Yeah.
It's like you seen the movie Slapshot, right?
No.
Old movie, 70s. Oh, yeah. But the guy's taking the axe to the bus, right, for the traveling team, and the guy's like, "What are you doing to the bus?" And the whole gist of the movie is it's like rough and tumble hockey players, right?
Oh, so like Cutting Edge or?
Oh my God!
No.
Did you just reference the figure skating movie?
Yes, he did.
Topic.
Yes, he
God.
did. But anyways, so like the whole thing with the movie is they reinvent themselves to be like thugs on skates, basically. So they come out of the game and this guy's sitting there with an axe and he's beating on the bus with it, cutting holes in it. And the guy's like, "What are you doing to the bus?" And the guy looks at him and goes, "Making it look mean." So that's the speeder here. I made it look mean. Yeah.
I appreciate sticking another dated sports movie
Right?
reference into our show.
70s, Paul Newman was in it.
Great movie, though.
Yeah.
The Hanson Brothers.
Yes. It's
classic. You've never seen that, have you?
You
Sure.
should.
You should.
watch it.
It's a great movie.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
All right.
But the biggest thing that I see with printing is layer lines.
Yeah.
And it gets really hard once you start doing things like maybe dry brushing and stuff like that, because what does dry brushing do?
Picks out the details.
Picks
all
up
details,
all the raised areas.
Yeah.
Well, your model is nothing but a layer of raised areas, right? So when you go to dry brush, you got to be careful that you don't just see you make big stripes down the side of your model or anything like that. So, but the thing about that is you see those kind of print imperfections when you look at it up close. Put it on a table during terrain, whatever. It looks fine.
good. Yeah.
You put this on the table and it looks like it belongs there.
Yeah.
And all those little details that you see as imperfections when you look at the models up close, you don't see them when they're on the table.
Well, your stuff looks good, but let's talk to an expert on this stuff.
Yeah, because I'm definitely not an expert.
Yeah, we need to.
We do appreciate your insight, though.
Yeah, thanks.
And I will have work for you in the future.
I need a better printer. Definitely. That's on the to-do list, is to get.
You're
a
liking
better
it that
printer.
much, then?
Yeah, it is.
Okay,
yeah.
cool. All right.
We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back with Dave from Imperial Terrain.
Tune in every Wednesday to Radio Free Tatooine, a Star Wars podcast that's better than some and worse than others. Take a trip to a water cooler far, far away as we bring some casual, fun conversation into the Star Wars podcasting community. Hosted by me, Sean, my sister Amy, and John. Radio Free Tatooine. We may not know what we're talking about, but we sure know how to record it. For more, visit RadioFreeTatooine.com, a proud member of the Radio Free Tatooine Podcast Network.
You're listening to the Legion Outriders podcast, a member of the Radio Free Tatooine Network, recorded on location at Power 9 Games. Whether you're looking for the latest releases from Legion, X-Wing, 40K, Magic, or any of our other extensive inventory of board and card games, head to power9games.com and use coupon code OUTRIDER10 to get 10% off your order. Plus, shipping is free on orders over $100. Now, back to the Outriders.
And we're back with Legion Outrider podcast. John, Josh, Matt, and we've got a brand new friend of the show.
Yay, more friends!
I know we're like they're adding,
we're racking them up
once a month.
It took us like 33 episodes, but we've got like 4 friends of the show now. This is great.
So I want to welcome Dave Lawson. What's going on, Dave?
Not a lot. And I think I would just like to start off and ask, is this the point in the relationship where we've just kind of gazed at each other from across the bar, may have just got a drink? We're not dating yet. I know that thread has gone on in the past. Have you guys bought me a drink yet, or what are we looking at?
No. We just sidled up to you in the bar and said, "Hey, I noticed you across the room. You come here often?" That's the part of the relationship that we're at right now.
Perfect.
Really, because I usually just walk up to people and say, "Want sex?"
You too.
And this is why Matt is single.
Yeah. I've been married for.
Oh, Holly doesn't listen to this show, does she?
No,
good.
We're good.
Awesome.
So despite the awkward introduction, let's go ahead and introduce Dave. Dave is the terrain man, if you will. He's the owner of Imperial Terrain. Is that correct?
Indeed. Yep.
So tell us a little bit about what Imperial Terrain is for those of us who are living under a rock.
Yeah, the 3 people who haven't heard of Imperial Terrain.
Sure. So primarily we design, so that would involve modeling, sculpting, molding, whatever you want to call it these days. Terrain, wargaming terrain that fits very nicely in the Legion genre. So what if you want to go like 30, 34 millimeter? We can argue all day about the scale. But that's what we do. We design them, and then we sell the STL files, or we have a small factory, which is my garage, where we print them out and then ship them around the world. And there's a small little team of us that we now support. Couple of designers, couple concept artists, and my wife, the CFO, who actually is head of production. Yeah, so she's now roped in. So nice little family business there.
That's awesome.
So just to get into kind of the technical nitty-gritty details, since you mentioned your factory, how many printers do you have, and what exactly do you have?
Great question. I have 10 operational Mark IIIs from Prusa, and those are FDM printers that print PLA filament. I have one SLA printer, which is a Form 2, and then I have about 4, I'm up to 5 standby Mark IIIs. So what I do is I kind of hot swap them out. So if one goes down, I'll put another one on the shelf and then fix the one that's down.
And how often, do you have 10 printers basically going full-time, 24 hours a day?
Full-time, yep. So they take a beating. Like Prusa is a solid brand. It's worth the money for sure. But that much volume on what is considered a desktop printer is significant. So I'm probably fixing something on at least 1 or 2 once, twice a week. So it's not terrible, but as you guys are, getting into it, dabbling, if you trying to troubleshoot them, right, and figure out what exactly is wrong in the first place can take 2-3 hours, and then fixing it if you have parts, or stripping it down off another one and what have you.
So how much of your products do you design? You mentioned sculpting. Do you do a lot of like actual hand modeling and sculpting like physically, or do you do most things digitally rendered?
Most things digital. One of the guys and I are toying with that, working on that. We haven't done any kind of casting or that kind of stuff yet. We're always looking at different ways to change it up, right? Because you can everybody these days can go in, use a browser-based modeling tool, and as you can see, there's a ton of different files out there and model your stuff. So we're always trying to find different ways to incorporate different technologies, if you will, platforms, old school methods to kind of like give us a little edge and really bring different cool stuff to the community.
So you said you guys are, you're modeling this yourself digitally. Mm-hmm. And looking at it, it looks very Star Warsy.
Yep.
How are you getting around or staying clear? Because Disney loves to sue people. How are you getting around making it look Star Warsy, but not necessarily having something that Disney can come and look at you and say, that's our IP, cease and desist?
Sure. So early on, I had the conversation with the powers that be, and the ground rules were laid out. And it's pretty simple. Number one, like don't use copyrighted terms or products, names, anything like that in the product names themselves in your brand. So, for instance, I can't make Star Wars Legion Terrain.com, right? I would get crushed in a heartbeat.
Have Grand Moff Tarkin's bungalow
Yes.
on Naboo.
Yes. So just stay away from everything from a naming point of view, and then also do not. What you won't see from us, and we're like, if we do have anything that's questionable, we're gonna quickly pull it off. But do not like X-wing, TIE fighter, AT-AT. Like, do not copy those, any part of them, and then print them and sell them. Right. So
things that are clearly recognizable as Star Wars things, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
You'll get, regardless of how you cut it up, if you're trying to do it a little different, you're gonna get killed. Like that's one of the reasons I did a spin on the DF9 Hoth turret, if you will, and I thought like, okay, this is too close, and pulled that off. If I do have something that looks very similar, it's probably not done by me, and that gives me a little bit of leg room. But now that we're getting very serious, and I can get into that in a minute, but I am going to pull all those things that are even close to being questionable off, or open source them. I've been doing that too, throwing them on Thingiverse, like the DF9 laser turret.
Yeah, and I've seen a couple of DF9s on Thingiverse, and I've got them in the queue to print here, so we can use them locally here in the stores. Mm-hmm. So that's what I was kind of worried about, and because you go onto Thingiverse and you see Y-wings, you see TIE fighters, you see X-wings,
sure.
You see stuff that is very clearly Star Wars IP. But I mean, I guess is it as long as you're not selling it, it's okay?
So I'm gonna pull out the lawyer card and say I'm not a lawyer, but that's from what I understand. You can model that and you can print it. Now, are they gonna come? I think they're gonna come down at some point. Where they're trying to figure out the STL game, right? There's a reason why FFG, why Lucasfilm, why nobody still kind of higher up the food chain has actually figured out how to sell them, because they can't do it yet. They haven't figured out a way to lock it down and protect it. So I think they're still figuring it out as far as where they can reach in, what licenses they can touch. I work in the software business full time, so kind of live that licensing discussion too. So I still think all that stuff's kind of up in the air, but we'll see it coming, over the next couple of years.
So a lot of the things that you've got on there so far are obviously following, motifs from, certain planets. You've got the Desert Collection, which, harkens back to Tatooine, obviously. You've got some civilian terrain, looks almost like something from like Naboo, from like Naboo or from like Coruscant. Like, what other plans do you have in the future for creating, new settings?
So we actually kind of roadmap things out, and how we do it is we say when we're getting to the end of fulfilling kind of everything that we've roadmapped, I'll go into the Facebook group, the Imperial Terrain Facebook group, and say, hey, what do you guys want to see? Like, what's still lacking? And they are typically much more aware of the roadmap than I am, though that's changed recently. But so for instance, a month or two ago, Gen Con-ish time, I've already forgotten, but they said, hey, like now that it's been announced that we're going to do some of the quote old school stuff in the timeline, they're looking for Naboo buildings already. And so then I say, okay, so now I need to go look and see if, hey, are there enough references out there? Can I get my concept artist to kind of like, hey, can we do this? Does it make sense? Does it fit into the gameplay? Oh, by the way, it has to fit on a build plate, or I have to be able to cut something up to fit on a build plate. So there's a bunch of different
giant Camino landing pads to go
right.
fight on.
Yeah, I mean, the printer that I have, and we were talking about it earlier in the show, it's small. It's like 150 millimeters square. So a lot of stuff, I'm really challenged with how I'm slicing it up and how I'm getting it to stay Legion scale, but not have to have 700 pieces that I'm putting together, or it just looks hackneyed because there's seams everywhere. There's enough challenges with 3D printing and build quality as it is with layer lines and things like that. So a bunch of seams just goes into that. So the build plate thing is huge.
Yeah, it's there's a bunch of this stuff, and I imagine we'll get to a question at some point where the engineering that's involved in these models and designs and buildings starts to become more important than like, hey, this is cool, I'm going to print this block and like it looks okay. Where you need to be able to hide where these
the Star
joints
Wars
are.
cube.
Yes. Like here is an antenna that's like literally two flat pieces glued together that the guy threw together in 5 minutes in some render software in the browser. So it's like there's a big line between all these different components and steps of design that go into a lot of the terrain pieces.
Speaking of the design, how much do you factor in the playability within the game itself? Like I see that you actually sell bundles that are made for 6x3 table or something like that. Do you put a lot of thought into how much terrain should be used in the game?
Yeah, my wife begrudgingly let me have a room in the house. We don't have a big house either, so it's the terrain lab, and what it is it's a full-time 6x4 table and then a bunch of shelves of stuff. So a couple of the local players will come over, and we will I'll take some of the new designs, I'll put them out, and then I'll just watch them play. I probably play very rarely nowadays, because I'm actually kind of more interested in why I went out to Michigan GT was I wanted to watch how people interact with it, how they use it, and what can be changed. So there's quite a bit of thought that goes into it, and I actually get a lot of kickback from the group because I'll launch a design or I'll show it to them, give it to some of the beta testers, and they'll say, well, why is it like this or why is it like that? And I'm like, guys, it's kind of like units in the game. Like it's got to be balanced. I can't make clearly one-sided piece and like Imperial fortifications that it's just, if you were to lay them out, then there's no way for units to get over them, right? So they're like, why are there ladders on the front side? It's like, well, do you want to like play so it's semi-fair, or do you want, you know what I mean? Like, you can you can hobby it up and take pictures so it's cool, but you're not going to get a lot of game value out of it. So
I'd like to purchase one ATST bunker, please.
Yes, exactly. So it's like we take quite a bit of time, and it's slowed us down a lot actually over the last 2 or 3 months. In the beginning, we were tearing files out at a very fast pace, and now we're slowing down and we're doing much more game testing, and especially since the rules revision came out, like now we can get pretty good as far as which little pieces provide light cover, heavy cover, and always a lot of challenge around area terrain, which we're going to try and tackle here shortly. But yeah.
Now, do any of you have like any kind of experience within the architecture itself, or any kind of design?
Nope.
That's actually shocking, because the stuff that you guys do, I mean, it looks incredible.
That's why you don't see the plumbing,
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Are these up to code?
Yeah.
Yep.
The where they put all the electrical outlets on the inside make no sense. I'm just saying.
The pipes. Where do the pipes go? I don't get it.
Oh,
right.
Nobody poops in space. We know this.
So one question that I have, and this is going to sound like kind of an adversarial question, but it's not intended that way. But with it's not.
Say something really rude to you.
Yeah.
Prepared.
With all of the stuff that's out there for free on Thingiverse and everywhere else, what's the benefit from buying STLs from you when a lot of the stuff that you have on the site is practically identical to something I can go and download for free?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think really it evolves around two things that I've kind of heard from the customer base, and it's quality and consistency. So quality of the designs. If you look at something like the landing bay set, right? You've got something that's thematically the same, that all fits together, works together, dimensionally is accurate, and it's something that you can continue to expand out on, and the details are there. So a lot of time was invested as far as number one, modeling it, but number two, testing that, right? Because people forget that you can't design something and then just print over open air a 45-degree angle, if you will. So that's part of the quality piece, and then the consistency, right? Any one of my files or any of the guys' files that I sell, because I test every one of them, when you buy it, you're going to grab the file, you're going to download it, you're going to throw it in your slicer, and you're going to print it with no supports, right? Like every single time. And if you do have a problem, you just ping me, email me directly. My email's everywhere. We have the contact form, and I fix it the same day, right? So That's really the two biggest things, and I didn't realize it until people started telling me that, hey, I can grab your file. I don't have to go cut it up 4 or 5 different ways to make it work. It comes oriented on the build plate, ready to go, and all I have to do is go in, use your recommended settings in my slicer of choice, and click print. Which a lot of people just, nowadays it's like they would rather save the time and pay a couple bucks to do it.
Yeah, that is, as somebody who's been in the terrain game for all of about 3 weeks, that's getting the settings right. I've thrown a lot of stuff out because it printed supports funny, or it warped, or I didn't do it right, or it was too thick or too thin, or infill setting, all that stuff. So that's huge. Yeah, that's really big.
As long as we got you on here, I had a bone to pick with you. I tried printing out one of your products on my HP inkjet printer, and it comes out as just a piece of paper. And what's up with that? Am I supposed to fold it like origami or what?
All I would say is you'd be surprised. I've had some very interesting email conversations.
These prints are 3-dimensional, so what you got to do is take your first print out and you put it back in the tray and print it again.
Oh, like
yeah. No, you got to put the paper in sideways too,
and fold it.
Okay,
and then fold it a couple times.
Yeah.
Fold it again.
You didn't read the doc file, did you?
I didn't. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, Dave.
But John brings up actually something that's something that might be of use to our listeners.
I find that unlikely.
Something, anything on this show that's of use to our listeners. Yeah. It's a big market out there for printers. When we were looking at getting into 3D printing and looking at stuff, there's a million printers out there. What should people be looking for when they're looking at buying a 3D printer, especially if it's something that they're not sure they're going to keep going with it? We bought the printer that we bought it because it said it was kind of a beginnerish printer, and we weren't sure if it was something that we were going to sustain. So what should people be looking for when they're going to buy a printer?
Okay, so it's kind of like buying, I don't want to say it's like buying anything, but it's like, number one, you're going to get what you pay for. Okay, so
buy cheap, buy twice.
Yep. If you get on Amazon and spend $200, get ready to have a lot of fun. So what you're looking for is, what are you going to do with it? If you're just going to print terrain, which you can make, it'll pay for itself many times over, then you want to look at something that doesn't have to go really high in heat, or it doesn't need crazy kind of extruders or anything that basically would be able to handle different kinds of filament. So there's a couple of different ones out there that are $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 because they're designed to work in a engineering lab or prototype lab or something like that. So look at, what are you trying to do? If you're just trying to print terrain, then you just need something that'll print PLA. PLA prints very well from 200 to 230 degrees Celsius, and you want a heated bed, right? I don't care if it's got a fancy magnetic bed that's removable. You just need a heated bed, period, because it makes your life year-round much better, and the PLA sticks to it, plus other kind of low-end terrain kind of plastics like PETG or ABS, they will print pretty well. So if I can lay it out pretty easy. If you think you're gonna print terrain for the most part, minis, that kind of stuff, then you want to look to spend $300 to $500. Like CR10S's or CR10s are very good. There's a couple other printers in that range that are knockoffs that come with a heated bed, an auto leveling bed, and they have like a 0.4 millimeter tip, and they can go up to 200, 250 degrees. And then their build plate, which we referenced earlier, on average is around 200 by 200. Right? Like that's a perfect machine for printing stuff for your kids or for yourself, minis, terrain, whatever the case may be. And it fits within that kind of decent budget without going super low.
Now, have you guys done any designs for other settings or any other game platforms, or even outside of the world of gaming?
I don't know about outside the realm of wargaming, and the reason why is because it takes a lot of motivation to stay up at nights after your 9 to 5 to do this, right? You got to have a passion if you really want to do this. A couple other guys like Corvus, tons of passion, right? You can tell in the designs. And there's a couple other designers out there, like, or you look at like tables like Sean's tables, right? Like it takes a ton of passion to be able to stay up and do this kind of stuff. So number one for me, I won't ever probably do anything outside of wargaming, or too far outside the realms of sci-fi tabletop, because that's my love and my passion. As far as
Sorry, John, you're gonna have to look elsewhere for your model train kit.
But we will look at doing other styles for sure. And I think as a terrain business, you have to survive.
So when it comes to printing this stuff, we've done some prints here, and the biggest thing that makes it look kind of 3D printed is you get layer lines and everything in there.
Yep.
How do you deal with layer lines in your designs? But then also if it's got raised areas that are like detailed or anything like that. You could sand it, but then you just sand down all of the blocks and everything, right? You sand down all the detail.
So I think it's like when you're hobbying and you put your post-print, well, number one, it actually starts in the printing. So number one, get the highest quality print you can. So if that's lower layer line, like 0.2 or 0.1 layer height, do that, and more around, make sure your printer's super tuned. Go out in your community, your printer community, and make sure that you tune your extruder, make sure it's extruding the right amount, latest firmware, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so you get that done, and you got this thing in front of you that's still pretty ugly because it's 3D printing. What you do is you get yourself some filler primer. You in a rattle can. It's at Home Depot. It's like $4. You spray the whole thing down, and then you give it a light sanding. And what happens is, like, that filler primer is designed. I think it was designed for cars to fill in those gaps. And you don't have to do it a lot. Get you some. Most of the time when I'm hobbying, I'll do 400 grit sandpaper, and then 1 or 2 passes. Once that's done, it's actually a lot smoother, and it'll take your base coat pretty well. It is some work, right? Like, there's a lot of people out there that think, hey, I'm going to 3D print this thing and it's going to look fantabulous, like right out of the gate. Nope. Like, I'm just going to tell you.
No, it doesn't. Yeah.
The reason you do it is because it would take you so long to hobby it or kind of do it old school, or you couldn't get that level of detail anyway. It's like, hey, I'm going to print this thing, and then the 12 hours it takes to print, I'm going to be painting minis or doing something else. And then when it's done, I'm going to enjoy hobbying it as well. And I didn't have to, like, hand sculpt something out of foam or something else that I would have never done near as good a job, right, to begin with. So.
But when you talk about taking that spray filler primer, if your model has recessed areas of detail too, how do you fill in the layer lines without nuking your detail?
I don't think I've ever had something that detailed where I did wipe it away. It's a good point. You can use if there was an area where you needed to get really good detail, and I would use something like a variable layer height setting in the slicer to go super low on layer height, like 0.05 or 0.1, just in that area, and then not touch it with the filler primer, to be honest. So if you need to mask it off,
okay.
Yeah, and then go from there.
And this is me asking questions because I'm a 3D printing noob and I know hardly anything about what I'm doing. So if I have these questions, I'm sure a lot of our viewers or listeners who are just getting into 3D printing probably have the same questions.
Yeah, there's a ton of good resources out there too. Like if you ask in the Legion Terrain group or in a 3D printed terrain group on Facebook, Reddit, there's a very good community. There's a ton of good. There's actually, you know what? I'm trying to fill the gap on YouTube. When I have some more time here, I'm gonna kind of do just a 3D printed terrain hobbying, because there's all the guys like the terrain tutor out there that show you the awesome old school techniques, but no one showed you yet. Like, hey, here's a 3D printed thing, make it pretty. So I want to go through those steps to show people how to do that. But there are a ton of resources out there for folks that are just starting out.
So from what we understand, you got a pretty cool contest running right now too.
Oh, you guys saw that? I was hoping.
Yeah, we sure did.
Sure did. Some peeps saw that. So we're like in this road to LVO. It's not directly associated with LJ and team, but what I'm trying to do is just like get the community going. You guys felt it, right? But before scouts dropped, before commandos dropped, everything was in like a hole of despair. So what I'm trying to do is just like, hey guys, I challenge the community. Show me your best like hobbied table. Show me like 3 pictures. Have some Imperial Terrain stuff in it, please, and then send me the pics. I'm gonna pick the best 5, put them into the Imperial Terrain group, and then the Imperial Terrain group's gonna vote. Whoever wins is gonna get a brand new Prusa Mark II's kit.
Ooh, right, and that's not cheap.
Not cheap. I love those printers though, as you clearly can tell. So I wanted like whoever wins, whoever puts that time in, that really shows like something different. A very good reward, right?
And you mentioned LVO, and LJ, when he was on the show last week, kind of mentioned a little bit. But tell us about your involvement with LVO, what you're doing, and how you came to do that.
Yeah. So it started quite a while ago, actually. You know, after I was at Adepticon, I saw that. I saw Gen Con, like, and those guys have a ton of work to do. I don't want to like, ding those guys. Those teams do a lot. They've got, I don't know, 50, 100 tables or something they've got to do at those big conventions. So it's not their fault. I think what I felt was, hey, I want to try and do something different for these upcoming tournaments. So I went out to Michigan GT and I showed up with one table of completely finished terrain, but much different than just mounds, like hills and random buildings scattered around. Like I want players when they play to like, hey, this is clearly a starport. This is clearly like an abandoned rebel base. This is like thematically, I want you to like feel that and see that from the table and play in there. So I took one of those tables to Michigan GT. Everyone really enjoyed that. And what I'm looking to do for LVO is do at least 4 of those. Depending on time, I want to maybe surprise LJ, even though he's probably going to hear this, and go to like 6 or 8. And work with work with Brendan over there too to really bring the best tables anybody's played on yet, right? So that's kind of the goal. Is I think if we can do that for the community and like show people like, hey, these things are insane. These aren't just like 3 pieces of scatter terrain thrown on here from the 40K tables. Like these things are like awesome. Like I think that'll help energize the community even more, get people more into it, and see that like thematically Legion is something different.
Just a quick question about how you got into this. Like, how long did it take you to really, perfect the art of 3D printing? And like, how big is your graveyard full of like half melted buildings?
Yeah. So I think we've had the store running for about 1.5 years now. But it was like 6 months before that I got into it. I was the GM for our Star Wars RPG from FFG Edge of the Empire, and I was like looking at the map with the markers, and I'm like, man, this stinks. I wanted more depth, and I wanted to be able to do some different stuff. So I kind of looked around and bought a 3D printer, and that was like over 2 years ago. So then I started just building stuff in Tinkercad, figuring out how to build a wall, how to build a shed, looking at kind of what was out there. And that's how I got into it. I don't know, something grabbed me. I've always loved Star Wars, whatever, like everybody else. And I just kept night after night after night, like modeling new designs. And then I put the original little desert house up, and people just went bonkers. And I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. So then I built a tower.
Nice.
Yeah, and this, I just kept going, and it hasn't stopped since. So that's how I got into it. As far as the graveyard's concerned, you guys have no idea. I mean, I'm probably I'm down in Austin, Texas. I'm probably gonna get a call from the landfill, even though, hey, PLA is 100% naturally recyclable. What's the word? It's actually
biodegradable.
There you go. Eventually.
Yeah, nice.
Right.
Eventually,
it's from
when the dolphins are running things, or the bees, or whatever, and millions of years after we're all gone. But it's biodegradable.
And don't fret. To this day, we still turn out like a lot of failures, and it's just because these 3D printers, folks. I'm going to tell you right now, if you buy one, just get ready. It's not a final solution, right? It's not like everyone thinks you buy it and you push the green button, as you guys know. Like you got some work, and it takes a lot of work to keep them up and running. Now, if you're into that, it's cool, right? And it's not an excessive amount of work, so no worries. But it does require care and feeding.
It's very much a tinkerer's hobby.
Yeah, for somebody who was kind of curious about it, but wondering if I should take the plunge, you've definitely brought me down on the side of, no, I'm just going to send some money your way and maybe get one of these landing bay outposts from you.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
Instead of investing money in a printer, what if I just got the thing I wanted?
Yeah. But then
somebody else have the headache.
There's and there's the other side of the camp that's like, why would I do that? I'll buy the printer and print everything, and then some people, get on the horse and ride it, and other people get bucked off, and the printer sits there cold and quiet in the corner because it was way too big a science project. So there's there's interesting range.
3D printing as a whole has been pretty neat for us because, I've gone and 3D printed cat ears for my daughter and she loves them. Yep. And, there's a lot of utility to a 3D printer just beyond 3D printing terrain for a game. So yeah, it's I'm already looking into getting a bigger printer to add to the stable. I don't think I'll get 10, but it's definitely something I'm looking at expanding.
You must have the largest butt scratcher available.
Exactly, and it's 3D printed, so it's a biodegradable butt scratcher because I use PLA.
Hey, it's much easier to sell your significant other when you go with that talk track versus I'm going to print a bunch of toys. Right.
Well, the significant other is the one who's actually more 3D printer crazy than I am. So she has a legal pad of 4 pages, single spaced of things that she's downloaded and is prioritizing how she's going to download it all.
So she chains you to the work table when you get home.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Keep printing.
Well, I got one last question for you, Dave. I touched on it a little bit earlier, but what can we expect down the pipeline from Imperial Terrain? Do you have anything that you're going to tease a little bit?
I do. I mean, I'm going to finish out. I've been upgrading the Imperial kind of theme. Not Empire. Notice I didn't say Empire. Imperial themes. Just for safety's sake. So I've got a lot of buildings there that I want to finish off. Then we do, the demand for some kind of forest-styled stuff has been there, but as you guys know, there's not a lot of stuff to go on. So, and the reason I say it's really hard to do that because there's not a lot of stuff to go on is oftentimes when you kind of just make up a design out of thin air, people don't like it. So it's hit or miss, but I would say that's probably a safe area. And then, we definitely want to have stuff that thematically fits with units that are coming out. And then there's also always random things that come November, I'm going to have a lot more time on my hands. And then I'll be able to go back to the community and say, hey, what do you guys want to see early next year? I'm thinking some really cool I like to go larger and larger. And I don't know if you guys have seen that Mark 88 defense platform. That thing's huge. 2 of them back to back are huge, but I got to keep it in scope of the table. But I'm gonna do some really large centerpieces that would dominate the center of the table that number one, cause a lot of issues for LOS, but there's also multiple levels and it's easy for trooper units to get up and down. That's the hardest thing.
Yeah, that's pretty sick.
Sounds great for key positions. That's wonderful.
As long as you're blue.
Right. So I know we said, hey, one last question, but here's the last question. You talking about the challenging aspect of finding source material for all of this stuff. Mm-hmm. How much are you guys looking at, just even if it's just for inspiration, things for the Old Republic? Video games or Star Wars Galaxies, because Star Wars Galaxies had player cities, had Corellia modeled, Naboo modeled. How much are you looking for inspiration for not only that, just housing, but they had things like material extractors and refiners, and and they've already got probably lower poly than you're working, but they've already got models made for that kind of stuff. How much are you looking at resources like some of the Star Wars video games that are out there for inspiration?
We do a little bit. What we have to do, number one, to be safe from any kind of litigation, but number two, I like to really mix up a bunch of different genres and try and come super close to Star Wars, but not without copying something directly. We look at games. I look at a lot of different sci-fi concept art. We actually do employ contract concept artists where I can tell them, I don't say, hey, I don't give them any pictures or anything. I say, for instance, the Imperial commo building. I told one of our guys, I said, hey, this is kind of my idea. I want a modular building. I want it to be essentially, and he knows kind of the rules around some of the different games out there. So I can say like, hey, like I'd like the height to be like this. I'd like to be in this style. I'd like to have a couple different surfaces for vertical movements and things along those lines and be in this theme. And then they will do 6, 7, 8 different cuts on it and then get it back to us. So we do a little bit, but we definitely don't, lean heavily on them. Like I said, for a couple different reasons. I always like to go and grab little tidbits that make sense here and there. And then, once again, you got to kind of blend it back into, will it fit on a printer? Will it fit on 2 print beds? And can we glue it together somehow mechanically and that kind of stuff?
Well, if you're ever in the market for a concept artist who's really good at squares and cubes,
okay, yeah,
I'm willing to volunteer because I do great squares. Yeah.
He's the squarest guy I know.
So does right? So does Legos.
Exactly. But hey, then you can at least say this one's a custom square.
Okay.
Just like cut a corner off or something.
Right.
With 5 sides? I forget.
Well, Dave, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. It was great talking to you. And
any last shout-outs where people can find your website, Facebook, Twitter, all that stuff?
Yeah, imperialterrain.com, right? Facebook's Imperial Terrain. We got a big group on there, a lot of friendly folks in there asking questions about 3D printing, fixing things if they go wrong, like any questions like that. A lot of pictures too of table layouts. So what do you do with the terrain once you've made it? Just click on photos, it's there. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're everywhere right now, as much as can be. That's its own thing, as you guys know. But I really want to give a shout out to like where we're going as a community. From going up to Michigan GT, there was a solid 24, 26 people there. Now that the new units are coming out, like I expect LVO to be huge. I think LJ said they're already north of 35-ish, and it's continuing to climb. So whatever we can do to support more people coming back to or new players coming in, which means new designs, like new cooler tables, just more people playing is just awesome, and keep FFG making new releases and new waves. So shout out to everybody else who's making terrain as well. There's Corvus, there's Dustin, there's a bunch of folks. There's the Imperial Terrain team. We're gonna stick around. We're gonna keep making stuff as long as we can. But really, I'm just super happy that the communities kind of have a second breath of fresh air.
Awesome, man. We're definitely looking forward to seeing the stuff that's coming out next.
Are you gonna be out here for LVO?
Guaranteed. I'm gonna be there.
Awesome.
Wednesday.
Look forward to seeing you, man.
Of course he's gonna.
Awesome.
Why? I don't know. Maybe he's gonna UPS it. I don't know.
I'm driving. It'll take me a few days.
Awesome.
All right.
Awesome.
All right, Dave. Well, thanks a lot, and we will talk to you later.
All right.
Thanks for being our. Wait. So do we pass the date
4?
test?
Yeah. Hey, you. What are you doing later? You want to come back to our place and Netflix and chill?
Sold.
Maybe.
Oh my gosh, I'm stopping this now.
So a big thank you again to Dave for coming on with us today. I learned a lot about 3D printing.
I did too. I feel so much more smarter, but at the same time dumber.
SMRT. Yeah.
Right.
Well, at least now we know, for people who are looking at getting into 3D printing, you've got a great source of knowledge right there. If you buy one of your STL files
Some
from
great
him,
groups for it. Yeah.
help you out.
Hey, yeah,
right.
support the guys that are spending all this time and bandwidth, testing the terrain actually.
And now
putting
that
him
he's
in
a friend of the show, I'm
conditions.
sure he won't mind the million emails I'm about to send him about how terrible I'm doing and how I fix it.
I mean, if you didn't creep him out already with your overzealous
Yeah, I'm
approach to
sorry
dating.
about that.
Yeah. Oh, his was overzealous. Sweet.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm glad I've got mine dialed in.
You might get a call back.
Probably. Yeah.
I just got ghosted.
Let's not kid ourselves. None of us are getting called back.
No, never.
No.
Yeah. I'm just swiping right all day with no responses.
How does Nova feel about that? Not great, I'm sure.
All right, guys. Well, thanks a lot for listening. We look forward to chatting with you guys next week. And thanks again to Dave.
You've been listening to the Legion Outriders podcast, a member of the Radio Free Tatooine Network.
Only now, at the end, do you understand?
For more from the Outriders, make sure you like us on Twitter @Legion Outriders, subscribe to our Facebook page at facebook.com/Legion Outriders, and make sure you like and subscribe to the podcast. Thanks for listening.
You're all clear, kid. Now let's blow this thing and go home.